I'm Stephen Metcalf, and this is the Slate Culture Gabfest Austin Butler is Caught Cat-Sitting edition. It's Wednesday, September 3rd, 2025. On today's show, the director Darren Aronofsky returns with Caught Stealing, a shaggy dog crime romp starring Austin Butler and a cat. Butler is an ex-baseball phenom whose life gets upended by a neighbor's ties to organized crime. The movie also stars Zoe Kravitz and Regina King. And then the Netflix feature, The Thursday Murder Club, stars Helen Mirren, Pierce Brosnan, Ben Kingsley, and Celia Imrie as retirees living in an assisted living home who solve cold case murders. It's directed by Chris Columbus. And finally, we discuss a New Yorker article by our ex-production assistant, Alex Barasch, about the film company A24. Is it the new Miramax, the new United Artists, the new Warner Brothers? What is it exactly, this film company whose name we see everywhere? Joining me today is Isaac Butler, the author of The Method, How the 20th Century Learned to Act. Isaac, welcome back to the show.
Always a pleasure to be here, Stephen.
It is always a pleasure to have you here. And of course, Julia Turner is a fellow at the Annenberg School for Journalism at the University of Southern California. Julia.
Hello, hello. Good morning.
Good morning. All right, let's make a show.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Checking off the boxes on your to-do list is a great feeling. And when it comes to checking off coverage, a State Farm agent can help you choose an option that's right for you. Whether you prefer talking in person, on the phone, or using the award-winning app, it's nice knowing you have help finding coverage that best fits your needs. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
The spirit of innovation is deeply ingrained in America, and Google is helping Americans innovate in ways both big and small. From improving emergency response times to protecting against cyber attacks, local, state, and federal governments are innovating with Google AI. This is a new era of American innovation. Find out more at g.co/American innovation.
Darren Aronofsky is the director of, famously, of Black Swan, Pi, Requiem for a Dream. He returns with Caught Stealing. This one stars Austin Butler as a 30-something bartender in the East Village in the late 90s. Hank's pleasant enough life in a wildly fun pre-Bloomberg New York City, at least in the depiction of this film, is shadowed by this fact. He was once a baseball phenom on his way to stardom when he crashed his car, injuring himself so badly his career was over before it even began. Well, Hank's shadow's about to get a whole lot darker because when he agrees to take his neighbor's cat, he finds himself caught up in a crime caper he can barely understand, much less escape. The movie also stars Zoe Kravitz as his girlfriend. We couldn't get any clips for this movie, but we could get bits and bobs of trailers. So let's take a listen to one of those.
Such a nice small town boy. You like baseball, dogs.
I need you to take care of my cat.
Where's Russ?
He's not here.
You know not to mess with us, yes?
What did you get me into?
They're scary monsters.
And you're their fall guy.
That's not happening.
Buckle your seatbelt.
Caught Stealing, exclusively in movie theaters, August 29th.
Isaac, right away I want to hear you do that voice.
Caught Stealing, exclusively in movie theaters, August 29th.
I knew you wouldn't let me down. All right, let's turn to the movie. Itself, the latest chapter in the unfolding Darren Aronofsky story, the guy who's made beloved films and significantly less beloved films, and also Austin Butler as a movie star. What'd you make of this movie?
It is, if you think of it as part of Aronofsky's filmography, very interesting because it returns us to New York City in the late 90s, which is the period in which he was filming his guerrilla breakthrough film Pi, which also has Hasids in it, and was filmed in New York City at exactly that time. And watching it, I think you can feel that is what he is actually most interested in. The two places where the movie comes alive is when it's like just being New York in the 90s and when it is focusing on the physicality of its performers, especially Kravitz and Austin Butler give sort of amazing physical performances, and they're always framed in such a way that their bodies are doing something really interesting that you can see, particularly in its sort of oddly choreographed sex scene. And so I enjoyed all of that, but the movie itself, or I guess on a screenplay level, feels kind of like a fake movie to me. Like all of the jokes feel like placeholders for better jokes. All of the quirkiness of the characters feel like placeholders for more imaginative quirkiness. Like it felt like it was aiming to be Jackie Brown or aiming to be, you know, any one of those Elmore Leonard movies that were really popular in the 90s. But there's just like so little there, and what is there tonally clashes all over the place that I left it feeling kind of, that was fine. And then as the days went on, I really soured on it personally.
I had a lot of fun being toured through late 90s New York City on the eve of my arrival there, and the kind of work that went into recreating particular street corners jolted me with certain fun shocks of recognition. I don't know. I think I enjoyed this movie a lot more than you, Isaac. And one of the things I enjoyed is Austin Butler, who I feel like people have been talking about for a while, but they've also been talking about how he like never stopped talking like Elvis. Like he's sort of been the next big thing, but also a slight figure of ridiculousness. And he just is like so magnetic in this, and I believed his performance and his frustration, and the thematic arc of the movie is like, get your shit together, Austin. And the way that he does is like stupid and cartoonish. It's basically like he, stops running and confronts his life. And in this movie, that involves being violent and participating in violence, which seems like a dumb message. But like the whole thing doesn't really make any sense. But just watching him go through that arc, I was cheering for him to learn the lessons he's supposed to learn. But the whole thing thematically is not the point. The point is it's like a Lower East Side picaresque. He's like dashing through cramped Chinatown shops. There's chase scenes. Like the way the movie moves through the city and the way he moves through the city is like very fun to see, even though the movie itself doesn't quite like, none of it really feels real except for, I think, him and his performance. Like all the rest of it feels kind of like shtick. But Steve, you got to break this tie, I think.
To Team Isaac. I mean, it's not a terrible movie. It's just an inconsequential misfire. What's weird is that it's kind of, it's grasping for depth, right? Like he's injured both literally and figuratively or metaphorically or spiritually or whatever. There's like, clearly it's basically all but announced up front that he played a boy's sport, but ruined his chances in it by acting like a little boy. He's never really fully grown up. One reviewer said that they gasped when he said that at one point in the movie that he's lived in New York City for 10 years. And I understand exactly why. That's how I felt. He doesn't feel like a human being who's A, that age, or B, spent 10 years. And that would mean he moved to the city in the late 80s. Like he really got there before Giuliani's New York and the Disneyfication of Times Square. He does not feel like that person at all. So that doesn't quite work for me. And then it's grasping also for a certain gritty urban authenticity, this city before, it's kind of, I mean, Giuliani's already gotten a hold of it, but not yet Bloomberg. It hasn't been totally hedge funded out of and private equitied, into a simulacrum of itself. And then finally a kind of shaggy dog fun of a kind that Honora, for example, pulled off with a kind of wild panache. And it kind of doesn't get any of them right. And then it runs them all together in ways that don't harmonize at all. And so like, Isaac, that really rings true to me. I wrote in my notes, the script has AI quality elements. I mean, they're just parts where it's like, we got to get from A to B. And they just sounded to me like they asked ChatGPT, to solve those problems for me. It reminded me a little bit of the great Jonathan Demme movie, Something Wild. And Julia, you're right, picaresque is the right word. There are examples of like wild, like careening out of control picaresque movies, but there's something about the heart of them that makes all of the incidents, cohere. True also of Honora. I didn't find that in this movie at all. And the one thing I would also say is that I thought the movie only got genuinely interesting when Liv Schreiber and Vincent D'Onofrio really enter the movie as characters. They've been lurking throughout the whole film as a couple of Hasidic gangsters. And then all of a sudden you enter a world that seems some effort has been put into making it particular, and real and highly specific to those characters, not only those two, but the world that they inhabit. And then Austin Butler enters that world as a kind of space alien, effectively. And that all seemed real and interesting and warm and humane. And then it just kind of gets upended by more sort of ultra hardcore violence, which the movie commits to early and often in ways that I found completely alienating. I just think this isn't a good movie at all.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. You actually were more down on it than me, because I will agree with Julia that, the recreation of the kind of tour of New York that it takes you on, which was a time that I was in New York a lot before I moved there, is a lot of fun. It's interesting that you mentioned something wild, because there's at the Alamo, they show a little interview with Aronofsky where he talks about the films that are influences on Caught Stealing, and he mentioned Something Wild, actually. His editor screened it for him before they went in to make the movie. And of course, After Hours, which Griffin Dunne is in, Griffin Dunne's character in Caught Stealing is named after his character in After Hours. It's the same blocks, But I want to ask, which New York detail was your favorite? A friend of mine texted me, I did coke in that Kim's when he walked. But for me, it's that there's a shootout at what is effectively Grand Prospect Hall, where we make all your dreams come true. I don't know if you remember those ads, but there's an action sequence set at Grand Prospect Hall. So that was mine. I'm wondering what yours were.
Yeah, I loved the way the laundromat looked when he went and did his laundry. That felt I was like, wow. I think of that as the present, but that's 27 years ago, and it looks like the past.
Totally. I think what the movie was missing was an Alphabet City denizen telling them how much realer the neighborhood was.
Exactly.
Earlier, and then another one being like, no, it was realer 10 years earlier.
Didn't we kind of have that in Regina King's character? Describing
a little bit, yes.
How she grew up in the actual projects. And I will say, I enjoyed her character and performance, and there's a marvelous soliloquy she goes off on upon biting into a black and white cookie that turns out to have plot significance. And at that moment really worked on me, because it's so fun to watch Regina King do anything and you're feeling kind of safe and sympathetic to her. And who doesn't love a black and white cookie? That is one of the best things about New York City in any era. There are so many good actors in this movie having a lot of fun with what they're doing, that I almost I came away from it being like, what's the deal with Darren Aronofsky again? Like, what's he about? Is he one of those directors who's really just about what you see and less about what it all adds up to thematically? Like, I'm trying to think of why we go see Darren Aronofsky movies, and this movie left me not confused on that point, because it was so kind of energetic and visually kinetic and compelling. But then when I, squinted afterwards to try to think about it for half a minute, I was like, I don't think that movie was about anything other than an excuse to make all those players move through that world.
Right.
Am I wrong? What is he interested in, actually?
No, I like I said, I think what he's interested in is like the bodies of the actors in space and that period of the 90s. Most of his movies are actually, if anything, like too thematically involved. Like The Fountain is just people talking about its themes for 90 minutes, or Pi is very much about what's going on underneath the surface of its kind of neuroses and stuff like that. But he is also like a great showman as a director, right? Like Black Swan is like a spectacular viewing experience, and so I feel like those are the stops he's pulling out, cards he's putting on the table. I don't know, whatever. Pick your bad cliche metaphor. That's what he's doing in this one. What it reminds me of, though, I know I mentioned Jackie Brown earlier, but do you remember, like, I'm sure you both remember, right when this movie is set, there's all of those movies like Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead, or 3 Days in the Valley, or like, they're like movies where it's like the Quentin Tarantino influence is like very strong. And so it's a lot of like tough guys having very banal conversations. And then there's some pop culture references and then some funny ultra violence. It kind of reminds me of one of those movies. Like if this movie had come out in the year that it was set, that's what it would be. You know what I mean? It's almost like a time capsule has been opened of those post-Pulp Fiction crime comedies.
Yeah. And there's a version of it, too, that's more comedic. Like, I think, was it The Nice Guys, that comedy that came out a couple of years ago? That was actually excellent, but nobody really saw or cared that much about. But this is like I don't know. It's so gritty and heavy. It has like the trappings and demeanor of a serious movie, but like I think it's actually just kind of a silly movie.
Well, that's the problem, right? Is like the heaviness and the lightness are just elements thrown rather incoherently into the pot without any sense of how they might, blend or, enhance one another. It's kind of thoughtless in a way. I think that's the origin of your struggle to understand what it might be about in any larger sense, is it's not really. But it does occur to me, here's the detail that I most liked about the period detail, New York detail I liked about it most was the payphone. The fact that I like the fact that this movie is non-didactically about, like consciously, but also non-didactically about a world, pre-digital world. There's a character who designs, very minor character who designs websites, which is just hilariously funny to these people who are so sexy. And as you say, Isaac, so embodied, so like gorgeously embodied, that the idea that you would sit around designing, not only that you'd sit around all by yourself in front of a computer screen designing such a thing, but in order to allow other people to sit around staring at computer screens. And there's a real poignancy to that. Like, to the extent this movie, all nostalgia movies are about loss. I think that one, and very often sentimentally about loss, which is a fake sense of loss, or kind of a fatuous sense of loss. That one was very real. It's like, New York was a physical place. You lived here because it was exciting, and you exited your shitty apartment, and you put up with the shitty apartment just to be part of the drama of that physical, gritty, maelstrom right outside your front door. And when you see a payphone, you're like, yeah, man, there's just not a digital, like there isn't this other alternate fake digital disembodied world paralleling this one.
That's sort of making me like the movie more. Maybe that's what the movie's actually about. I still though would send people to see it. It's like a beautiful, I don't know. The choreography is gorgeous. The like tumbling through the world is gorgeous. And Austin Butler is a legend. Like, he's gorgeous, but he's just so, I'm like ready to watch him do anything, cast him as anybody. Let's see more from this fella.
All right. It's Caught Stealing. It's in theaters. Check it out, says Julia. All right, moving on. Fall is in full swing, and it's the perfect time to refresh your wardrobe with pieces that feel as good as they look. Luckily, Quince makes it easy to look polished, stay warm, and save big without compromising on quality. My children are like little jackals. They're like little magpies, and they come and they steal my wardrobe items from me, and they seem to have figured out completely independently of me that Quince makes really, really, really nice, really cozy, really well-made clothes, because they've been disappearing at a very high rate lately. So I have to go back and order more and click refresh. I'm about to do a Mondo sock order, the little wee runner socks. They're all incredibly high quality. And just to like make this a little sexier, They do linen, they do wool. Their wool coats look designer quality, but at a fraction of the price. As I've said a million times, I get nothing out of this other than the pleasure of sharing with people that I really, really like this company and love their products. And they partner directly with ethical top-tier factories. They cut out the middlemen to deliver luxury quality pieces at half the price of similar brands. It's a kind of wardrobe upgrade that feels smart, stylish, and effortless. So keep it classic and cozy this fall with long-lasting staples from Quince. Go to quince.com/culture for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/culture to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/culture. All right, now is the moment on our podcast where we discuss business. Julia, what do we have?
First, we have to tell you about our bonus episode this week, which is available only to Slate Plus subscribers. And we are solving a mystery. Who killed the narrative podcast? There was a terrific article about the decline in narrative podcasting in Rolling Stone by Eric Benson. And we are joined on mic by our wonderful producer, Ben Frisch, to talk about the trends in the industry, why, in fact, narrative podcasting may be dead, and whether anyone will ever revive it. Great to have his insights, great conversation. You should listen if you're a member, and if you're not, well, why aren't you? You should be. Here you are listening to the show, seeming to enjoy our voices. For a small fee, you could hear this extra episode and support Slate's work and make our show possible. It might be the moment. This conversation, which we already taped, was delightful and made me cackle at various points, despite being about a somewhat depressing topic. So perhaps this is your week to join Slate Plus, which offers a host of benefits, including ad-free versions of this show, a bonus episode every week for this and a bunch of other Slate podcasts, and of course, the opportunity to read as much as you like on slate.com. And of course, it's also a way to support us and our show. To sign up for Slate Plus and get those benefits, you can go to slate.com/cultureplus. And if you sign up there, you give us a little boost as the people who wooed you over. So please let us be your wooers. It's slate.com/cultureplus. All right, what's next, Steve?
All right, well, The Thursday Murder Club is a series of comfy, cozy British mystery novels by Richard Osman. It's now arrived on Netflix as a feature film directed by Chris Columbus. He of Home Alone, Mrs. Doubtfire, and some of the Harry Potter movies. Interesting choice. The movie takes place in a retirement village in the English countryside where three retirees, a former psychiatrist played by Ben Kingsley, a former trade union leader played by Pierce Brosnan, and a former, we don't know exactly. It's kept coyly
International Woman of Mystery.
Exactly, an international woman of mystery, but clearly a spy, played by Helen Mirren, gather every Thursday to turn their now sadly underutilized talents towards solving a cold case. When one of the owners of their beloved retirement community shows up dead, the cases go from cold to very, very warm indeed. In the clip we're about to hear, Celia Imrie informs the other three that the owner of the nursing home has been murdered. Let's listen.
What's all this about, Joyce? I was doing my yoga. You can't salute the sun twice in one day.
No, temporary members of the TMC aren't supposed to call extraordinary meetings.
There's been a murder. An actual murder.
What?
Who? Tony Curran. He was killed in his house yesterday morning. Now we've got a real case to solve. Isn't it wonderful?
No, Joyce, it's not wonderful.
If Tony Curran is dead,
who's going to protect Cooper's Chase from being destroyed? Ventham can do what he wants.
Yes, of course, and I'm very sorry about Tony. Obviously, R.I.P. and all that.
Who would want to kill Tony Curran?
Mm-hmm. And how do we catch them?
The police are probably making a list of suspects right now.
What we need is a man or a woman on the inside.
Oh, and I think we know just the person.
This is definitely intended as comfort viewing, right? In that tradition of Miss Marple. It sort of involves an English manor house, and, there are a lot of OBE winners in the cast here. Were you comforted, amused? What was your reaction to this?
Well, I should first share my history with this series, which is that I have been reading these books, the Thursday Murder Club books. I think there's 4 of them out and maybe a 5th one coming, and they're really wonderful. Like, I think I've endorsed them. The thing that is wonderful about them is that the characters are really fully and well drawn as people late in life trying to figure out what to do with their life and time, and the fact that so many people they love are dead or dying all around them, and yet they are going on. Like, there are a series of mysteries written at a sufficient level for them to be interesting to me. Like, I can't go below a level of literary capacity. And what makes them interesting is that they take the world and lives of people at this phase of life seriously, emotionally, and effectively emotionally, and the characters evolve over time. I think that background makes me almost incapable of judging this show. I was excited to see it because The actors in it are so good. Helen Mirren as a sexy super spy. Why not? It seems like a very credible rendering, and yet I don't know. I mean, that I could hear it. That clip. It doesn't. I think it's like dinkier on screen than it feels reading. And I'm very curious what you guys made of it. I mean, I enjoyed it perfectly. Watched it with my kids. Seemed fine, but I'm not sure it quite matches what's actually really wonderful about the source material.
I don't know if you all read the New York Times roundtable conversation with the cast of the film, but I just want to read you the opening thing the interviewer says, because I think it's very telling.
Please.
The movie gives off this aura of competence. It's very polished filmmaking. That's the highest praise they can give. And Helen Mirren is immediately like, well, I hope it's better than competent. But the truth of the matter is, I think this movie shows the downside of consummate British professionalism in that it's very clear that no one involved in it is working very hard at all. Like, they just know what to do. My guess is that the shooting days ended early. No one's trying hard. In the same interview, Pierce Brosnan is like, we never talked about backstory. It's just a very like, oh, and then I could go and have tea and champagne in my trailer. Chris Columbus, who never looks like he works very hard as a director, among the hackier professionals we have around, sort of dials in this thing. Everything looks very pleasant. You don't have to watch it. It's definitely a laundry folding movie. The thing that surprised me the most, though, is that suddenly at the end, it discovers this like rich kind of emotional seam and texture that's been missing the whole time in like the final 5 minutes. And then the movie ends, which I was sort of really, once the solutions of the murders are surprisingly like sad and moving. But also, like, we watched it with my 11-year-old, and we are also with them watching Only Murders in the Building, which is also about old people solving a crime, and it's also funny and it's also sad, and it's so much funnier and so much sadder and so much more inventively made than this movie that I couldn't just help being like, I just wish we had watched 4 more episodes of Only Murders in the Building while we were watching this, because this just really feels like a checklist that someone is going down and checking it off, and that no one has thought very hard beyond like memorizing their lines and turning the lights on.
That's a great comp, by the way, Isaac. Exactly right. I mean, my understanding, Julia, from Laura Miller's wonderful review in Slate of the film, and she seems to be a fan of the novels, is that the novels don't turn old people into cutesy stereotypes and treat them almost like zoo specimens or something, and regards them as utterly fully human. And so the fact that the outrage is that they're not solving murders or still doing things, and that they've been as pleasantly warehoused as they have been, it's still warehousing. And therefore, their insistence that they still have abilities and lives and ought to have those connected up to purposes is actually kind of weirdly like powerful and true. And that's a great background for a highly MacGuffin-y, murder series. And this one tries to have it both ways. They're sort of, their gestures towards them as still fully alive and competent beings that immediately get undone by old people being treated as an alien species, in a way. So this was my note, is that, Isaac, I kind of agree with you. It touched on something at least semi-real towards the end. And then, of course, there's a classic Chris Columbus needle drop that almost kills the mood when he comes in with "Oh, Very Young," the Cat Stevens song, which is just to like crushingly literalize the moment and have the feeling for us. And so I wrote in my notebook, well, what have the boomers left us? Right? Because, I mean, that's the other thing, is no one ever does the math on old people anymore, right? No one wants to confront. I mean, this movie does it a little bit, but there were moments where they're like, oh, because they're 80, they must have been born in the 1920s, right? And it's like, no. We're all so fucking old and in such denial about it that when someone is 80 years old, they're fucking baby boomers, right? Like, And they don't seem like baby boomers to me. There's like one, maybe a little bit. The Pierce Brosnan character is wearing, I think he's wearing a Springsteen t-shirt from the River Tour, which means that he was like looking at rock and roll in 1981. But by and large, it's almost funnily enough a form of it. Like this movie managed to be both boomer masturbation and boomer self-denialism, right? It's like no, you are the old people, right? And you were 18 years old or whatever you were, and you were young in 1968. You're certainly young for the fucking Beatles, I mean, you were a child for the fucking Beatles, and yet all of a sudden you're all into like chess and knitting and classical music or something. It's just preposterous. But so I wrote in my notebook, what have the boomers left? Indeed, left us. Schlock TV show with one last paycheck vibe is a pretty good closer. I mean, it's just so phoned in and so cutesy. But the one thing is, Julia, can you guess what I most loved about? In a million years, you won't be able to, but I'm just curious because maybe it was what you most loved about it.
Was it Naomi Ackie, who's lovable and everything?
Pierce Brosnan.
Oh, he's great.
He's wonderful in this. I always like, what a fucking mannequin his whole career. And talk about like what a golden efflorescence, right? This guy who's now, I got to assume, well into his 70s. He's got a beard. I didn't recognize him at first. That twinkle. There's just a lived-in whimsy to him. I think he's wonderful in this movie.
He's good. It is interesting, though. Like, what's good about the books is the interiority of these characters, and they all, like the glimmer of roundedness that you found in the Brosnan performance ends up in all of them. Like they all really have substantive emotional arcs and situations that are not pat and not cliched. Joyce does like to bake as much as it is, depicted in the movie. But apart from that, and they're really poignant and moving. And they, like, the murders are, one or two a book, and they get wrapped up. But these emotional journeys with each of them are real, and they develop, and they're still growing. Like, these people are still growing and learning in the age that they are. And also, I mean, I don't know about book 5. I don't know if it's going to be the last book, but I think presumably they may start dying. Like, it feels like a world where they may really lose each other over time as the books continue. I don't know how Osmond is planning to finish the books. And so it's funny because you would think, why not bring it to life and put some of people's favorite actors on screen who are deeply capable of conveying rich interiority? And yet what is conveyed here is sort of like brisk and bubbly and doesn't get at the heart of what makes the books wonderful. I will also just say, this retirement community is absurd. They each live in like a palatial apartment with custom wallpaper. Like it's an extremely elegant.
It's absurd,
retirement home. So that part of it is certainly cozy. Like they each have their own different apartment. They don't look like cookie cutters. They're done in their own styles. They've each spent pounds upon pounds renovating them in a custom fashion. Like, no wonder they don't want to move. Anyway, I if you don't know the property at all, I mean, I don't think it's like a terrible watch if you're looking for something basic to watch on Netflix. But if you're curious about this world at all, I would send you to the books. They really are terrific if this sounds at all like your cup of tea. And at some point, we should do a special episode on old people have feelings too while they solve crimes. I gave up on Murders in the Building after season 1 because I found it so kitschy and false, but apparently it's settled into something better. And then there's the Ted Danson show, and maybe they'll make the next book here. Like it would be interesting to look at those things all comparatively, because old people solve crimes, and that gives us an excuse to hang out with them and think about what their lives are like, is really an entire genre at this point.
Right. And also, when you just look at the history of public life in this country over the entire globe, it's every decade has been defined by whatever decade the boomers are in their own lives, like the pig in the demographic python. And a defining thing about the next 10 years is going to be their exiting the stage, right? So it's like there's going to be a ton of this material, and those depictions are going to be fascinating. It occurs to me that like the dilemma of depicting the elderly is if you depict, especially in a pop cultural context, is if you really humanize them and make them genuinely recognizable as human beings, then you are just going to think of them in the context of their imminent demise, I think. And I think that the tendency to sort of slightly dehumanize them and freeze them in stereotype is a way of just like enlisting them in our common denial of like what our fate really is, right? Like if you humanize an elderly person in a depiction, you are going to have to acknowledge like disease and death in ways that pop culture just doesn't have a tolerance for. So they always end up these kind of quaint toy, vignette figures or whatever. All right, well, this one is The Thursday Murder Club on Netflix. Check it out.
At Sierra, discover top workout gear at incredible prices, which might lead to another discovery. Your headphones haven't been connected this whole time. Awkward. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
This episode is brought to you by Saks Fifth Avenue. Saks Fifth Avenue makes it easy to get creative with your personal style and find the best arrivals for fall. So I went to Saks.com for an accessory that I'm always in the mood to shop for, sunglasses. I love stylish sunglasses, particularly the classic kind of Jackie O-shaped, the big, like slightly oval, dark glasses. And it's a little luxury that, I can afford even when I'm trying not to shop. So I looked at some of the sunglasses on offer at Saks, and they've got all kinds of shapes, not only my favorite Jackie O's, but all kinds of fun cat eye shapes and different designer sunglasses. And just looking at them has been an inspiration for what sunglasses to pair with what outfits. But that's just my experience with Saks.com. There's so much more to explore based on your personal style and what you're looking for. So this fall, whether you're trying out the latest fashion trends or curating a closet that stands the test of time, Saks has you covered. If you want shopping to be fun and easy, then head to Saks Fifth Avenue for inspiring ways to elevate your personal style every day.
All right, well, the film distribution and production company A24 has been around about 13 years. And during that time, it's won 21 Oscars. It's Moonlight, The Brutalist, Everything Everywhere All at Once. As the New Yorker writer Alex Barasch says, among fans, it has become synonymous with auteur-driven independent cinema. Some think of it as an auteur unto itself. I should say Alex is an ex-production assistant from this show. Congrats on this piece. Isaac, let me start with you. You yourself are an auteur. You're both an author of a book and you've directed plays. What do you make of what do you make of the piece as a whole? But what do you make of a film company? And it's not the first. I mean, Good Machine, Focus, Neon now, Artisan, and of course, probably most legendarily in recent memory, Miramax, and then Weinstein. They tend to have a cohesive identity because they're run as fiefs, and the sensibility of the medieval lairds in control of them filters down to the filmmakers that they tap and the freedoms that they give them. I mean, ironically, I guess what I'm getting at is that they're distinctive, these film companies, for giving an enormous amount of power and discretion in the form of money to film directors, artistic freedom to film directors, and yet they managed to end up with a coherent house style.
Yeah. One of the real gets of this article is that Alex is actually able to interview the people in charge at A24, who, unlike the Weinsteins or many of those other moguls, actually avoid the limelight, do not want to give interviews, do not like talking about themselves or how they work, and are somewhat shy on that front, right? That is, in fact, one of the most unique things about A24 is that the people who run it don't want to be the center of attention. I think because, on social media, there's a lot of like, oh, the A24 aesthetic, or that looks like an A24 film or whatever. And I actually think that is overblown. It is hard for me to look at Eddington and Past Lives and be like, yes, clearly the same studio made these. I think the thing that is consistent is the idea of a personal vision. They invest in people for multiple films, even when the first film doesn't do well. Or if the first film does well and the second one doesn't, well, maybe they'll probably do the third, right? They're really invested in those kinds of things. I was shocked to learn that Janet Planet, for example, only made $800,000 at the box office. But they're going to do Annie Baker's next movie because they believe in her. I'm very curious to see how long that remains the case, because what Alex catches them at this transition moment, both for the studio and for the sort of indie Hollywood producing distribution world in general, in that the industry is in a huge amount of flux. It's not covered in this article, but, Mubi has, because of all that, the substance money and some VC money they have, Mubi is like outbidding everyone and driving the prices up at festivals to buy a movie into like the stratosphere, right? So it now costs more to play the game that they're playing. That's one transition. And then the other transition is they now have all of this VC investment, and they've done what is probably the most idiotic thing they could possibly do, which is try to get into AI. And so my guess is that we'll look in 5 years at Alex's piece and be like, oh, this is actually the beginning of the end of what we liked about this studio. This is actually almost a eulogy for what the studio was, because, they want to grow. They want to make a movie out of Elden Ring, great video game, but they want to make a movie out of Elden Ring. They see that as their Lord of the Rings. You can see where it's going, which is towards these larger projects. And what no one in that article can articulate is why they want to be a larger company than they are right now. That is the thing they don't seem to actually have worked out. Whereas you can hear them explain very clearly why they want to be in the auteur business. They do not actually seem to know why they now want to be a major minor studio. And I don't necessarily think there's a good reason for them to do it. If what they're doing, currently, they're the best in the business at, and they are. And so to me, it felt almost elegiac reading Alex's piece. I don't know about you guys.
I mean, Julia, I wonder if it's because the business model of being in, auteur-driven, low to mid-budget cinema is in the long term a pretty poor one, at least in terms of investors, and that by getting into AI and maybe, kind of tentpole IP-driven cinema, they can fund one by doing the other. What'd you pick up on reading this?
Yeah, I mean, it's true that there's more competition in this landscape. There was a good piece in the Hollywood Reporter a couple months ago about sort of the cool kids war in Hollywood that framed it more as being kind of the A24 versus Neon versus Mubi. Like there are now this trio of companies that are seeking out interesting creators, making the kind of work that Hollywood proper no longer fosters bloom. So there's more competition to do what they do. It was great to get to hear from these executives who don't usually talk, although what they said was not that surprising. It's like I could sort of tell that's how they're running the company from watching the stuff the company makes. It's not contra to your expectations the way they talk about what they do particularly. And I don't know. I mean, a big swing at Elden Ring doesn't necessarily seem bad to me. The Lord of the Rings movies were great. I guess you could say we just do small stuff. Some big studio should make that movie. Why should we? But if it's one of their beloved directors who's interested in it, why not go on that ride with them? Honestly, for the same reason that they have done the rest of what they've done, which is interested in empowering their selected talent to do the next thing and grow. And it may be that they need to diversify.
I think a very, very, very key set of sentences in this article is, but the studio is in flux after a recent infusion of venture capital money and a $3.5 billion valuation. Its production budgets and commercial ambitions have grown. I mean, that's where I extrapolate that, maybe the business model wasn't great. You had to turn to outside funding. Outside funding is VC money, often private equity money. What they want is growth, 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 growth. They're looking for a quote unquote exit strategy at a higher valuation. And therefore, it just happens to be that moment in the history of dumb money where if you want to go big or go home, you turn to AI because it's the faddish thing. It's either that or crypto, and in the film business, it also means that you put a massive bid on some piece of intellectual property, And have it be like the Minecraft movie, right? Which you can feast off of for, probably 15 years.
Not to do a crossover event here, but actually What Next a couple days ago did a piece on A24's venture into the world of AI. And the reason why it's actually not super described in Alex's article is that they haven't announced what they're doing. They've opened a lab to come up with AI tools for them and other studios, I assume, to use. But what those will actually be, what their purpose is, how they'll work and everything, like no one knows. They have not actually said anything about that. It's like they are putting some of this money into doing AI nonsense, basically.
I mean, I just don't necessarily think it's nonsense. I think I'm like terrified of AI and horrified by it in various ways, but I also think it is like a really interesting and compelling creative tool in different ways. And I don't think it's terrible that this company is trying to figure it out. I agree with you, Stephen, that the broader economics of taking money from people who expect you to return a significant profit feels like the bigger problematic ding dong in this piece than, I don't know. So I think it's better to be exploring AI and figuring out what it is so you can figure out what to think about it than going head in the sand about it. And
I mean, it's a great way to play with other people's money. It's just when you look at the, people who are doing hard reporting on the numbers of the AI startups, like vanishingly small, if any, are making any money. Like AI is a lot of money being circulated amongst investors. It's not itself a profitable enterprise. So, whether one thinks it's apocalyptic or humanity's savior is separate from the question of whether the technology people have found profitable uses for the technology. And funnily enough, they actually haven't. So, kind of hanging your pitch as a film company on what AI will do in the future fits a pattern of a lot of pitches to VCs these days. And of those, like 0.5% are yielding anything like profit.
So basically, they've taken a lot of money from one of the firms that funds OpenAI, which is Thrive Capital, and they've hired this guy, Scott Belsky from Adobe, to be running this AI lab. Or I hate calling it AI, so let's call it a large language model lab. And at first they were talking about how this was going to be internal tools about figuring out fan behavior, identifying potential audience members, stuff like that. But he has also said that, he wants to do stuff like, you have the LLM be the character and you talk to the character, the deep conversation with the character, or it will give you plot ideas for your movie and all that sort of stuff, which, to me is the death of art. Like, if you're doing that, you're not actually supporting an individual human's creative vision. And so it does seem to me counter to what their mission is. But like I said, I don't think 5 years from now, their mission is going to be discovering the smaller auteur filmmakers, many of whom are playwrights, weirdly, and giving them money to, write and direct their personal films. I think it's going to be trying to do these larger things that they can make more money out of. I mean, that's the cycle that these companies always go through, just like Miramax. As Alex narrates at the beginning, what happened to Miramax by the time A24 come around, it had become like a parody of itself, doing movies like Cold Mountain, just chasing Oscars. And so I feel like, each time one of these comes around, we get some good years. We get like a good decade where some interesting people get to make some interesting movies. And then that company drifts in the way that capitalism will have it drift towards being bigger and less interesting. And then some new upstart will come around, and then we'll get another 5 to 10 good years with those people.
Cool. You're right to flag that Cold Mountain really catches some strays in this piece. Cold Mountain just gets like fucking torched in this piece. It's like an obvious piece of Oscar chasing dreck, which I don't think I even ever saw Cold Mountain, but that was
the only
funny.
people who saw Cold Mountain were Oscar voters, as far as I can tell. But I do feel like we're just catching it at that point in the cycle in this piece. It just seems to be.
I guess the broader step back thing that I find cheerful about it, and because I don't feel particularly attached to it being A24 that does this forever, is like people want, and maybe this speaks to your AI point too, Isaac, and thanks for bringing in that What Next app. That sounds great. I'm going to go check it out. People want individuals and original stories from specific human brains. People like that. And the genius of figuring out how to market that and sell that and kind of know that that's attractive to a broad swath of people, if not all people, allow them to create a business here in this moment. And whether or not it's them, I feel like there will be a business in helping foster actual human creativity and connect the works that result to actual human beings who want to connect with other specific human brains. And I weirdly think the rise of AI is going to like only create a more fervent hunger for that kind of work and make the work of doing that more necessary. So it'll be interesting to see where A24 goes and whether they can stay true to their ethos. But the fact that they've been able to have success with that ethos, to me, is like a bright spot in this particular cultural moment, whether or not they're the ones who get to carry it forward.
All right. Well, the piece is A24's Empire of Auteurs. It's in the August 25th edition of The New Yorker, and it's by Alex Barasch. All right, let's move on.
Prime delivery is fast. How fast are we talking? We're talking puzzle toys and lick pad delivered so fast you can get this puppy under control fast. We're talking chew toys at your door without really waiting fast. Pee pads, cooling mat, and peg hammer fast and fast. And there's training TREATS faster than you can say sit fast. And now we can all relax and order these matching hoodies to get cozy and cute fast. Fast free delivery. It's on Prime.
Lowe's has the Labor Day deals you need to give your home a new look. Buy one, get one free select interior paint via Visa gift card rebate. Then, add the final touch with 2 for $8 on select 2.5 or 3-quart mums. Refresh your home and save big while doing it. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 9/3. Mums offer in-store only. Selection varies by location. While supplies last. More terms and restrictions apply. See Lowes.com/rebates for details.
All right, now is the moment in the podcast when we endorse. Isaac, what do you have?
I have 2, as is my want. I feel like I often come in here with 2 because, I'm just a guest, so I have to save them up. But one is for if you're in New York City, and one is for if you're in anywhere. If you're in New York City or coming to New York City in the next couple months, there is this hilarious play off Broadway called Ginger Twinsies. It is a super queer parody of The Parent Trap, the Lindsay Lohan version of The Parent Trap. And while that might not sound like your cup of tea, I got to tell you, this is like R-rated panto. It's like nonstop dumb jokes, references, clever wordplay, physical comedy at like a very, very high level for 90 minutes. My wife was laughing so hard she almost started hyperventilating. It is unbelievably silly, just dumb, good fun. Very queer, very naughty, very referential. It's so chock-a-block with references that there's a QR code in the program so you can play bingo with them after the show is over. And it's just great. I had such a goddamn good time. It is so delightful. So if you're coming to New York or you're here, you're looking for a thing to do, you will laugh your ass off. If you're not in New York and you're looking for a good book to read, may I please recommend to you Emily Adrian's new novel, Seduction Theory. Have either of you read this book yet?
No.
It just came out a couple weeks ago. Okay. So Seduction Theory is a novel framed as the MFA creative writing thesis of this student, Roberta, who has fallen in love with her professor, who the novel is about. And so it's this woman, this couple, this professor couple, this power couple of professors, Ethan and Simone. And Simone has kind of emotionally but not physically seduced her student Roberta, while her husband Ethan is contemplating an affair with the department secretary. And so it's about a lot of different things. It's about love. It's about marriage and over the long term. It's about forgiveness. It's about sex. It's about creative writing, and it is the rare book that is as smart as it is steamy. Like, it's a very smart book. It's doing a lot of really interesting, tricky things. It totally sticks the landing, which is a very complicated kind of double axle pirouette sow cow thing or whatever. Very, very well. It's, for you, Stephen, it's filled with Nabokov references. It's a really, really, but it's also a really, really fun read. I devoured it in a day and a half, but it does not insult your intelligence at all. It's super sexy. It's super funny. It's called Seduction Theory by Emily Adrian, and I hope everyone will check it out.
That's a couple of raves there. My endorsement this week is a brisk read It is a New Yorker piece by Ruby Tando called Inside the World of the Great British Bake Off. And it's basically just...
I texted that to like 30 friends.
Yes, it just answers the question that you have, which is, what would it be like to be on British Bake Off? Which, if you have any baking Jones at all, you sort of think, man, that would be fun. And then they make like one thing and you're like, literally, how the fuck do they do that? There's no fucking way I could rate. And they seem so cozy and nice. And the whole thing seems so absurd. And why are they in a fucking tent? Like, just if you've ever watched the show, you've wondered what's it like. And sort of oddly, I don't feel like I've seen this before, and because it appears in the New Yorker, it has all the kind of elegance and thoughtfulness you would expect from such a thing. And anyway, if you're in that camp, I suggest you read it. One of the funny bits is that it's by a contestant named Ruby, but there is a different contestant named Ruby who is a bit more famous than this one, and this one is amusing on that point, and many others. So it's an essay in the New Yorker, Inside the World of the Great British Bake Off.
Oh, that's great. Okay, Isaac, this one, I have two things, but the first part is a kind of a co-endorsement almost. It's the new Beth's album, Straight Line Was a Lie.
Yeah.
Just waiting for it.
Yeah. I thought you might endorse it, so I didn't put
great
it on my
anticipation. And it doesn't disappoint, right? This is a band that's just, they were the little band that no one knew who they were, New Zealand. Just really just fucking impish and fun and rocked really hard, but a lot of songcraft and musicianship, but no showing off. And with this just wonderfully fragile sensibility of the lead singer and songwriter, they're just great. And they've just done nothing but get bigger and bigger and bigger. And this is like, they're at that moment where a lot of people are wondering, like, can they keep it going? And is it going to like bump up to the next level? And they delivered. I mean, they just delivered a great record. I mean, looking over the songs of like 5 of the first 6 are to me just like flawless. There are 3 or 4 other really good ones. I mean, it's a 10-song record and 7 or 8 of the songs are terrific.
Yeah.
And I won't say anything more. Just check it out. They're just a great rock and roll band.
Also the result of a very long wrestling with writer's block on Liz Stokes' part. I mean, they've been very public about that but in interviews and stuff. But I think they themselves were caught in that thing you were asking about what are we going to do, now that we've had this breakthrough. And they really solved it. They really got over that hump in a really beautiful way. It's janglier than their other albums, I would say. If you're a jangle pop fan as opposed to a power pop fan, this is the one to start
exactly
with.
That.
I think I might be.
That. They went jangle pop and throttled back on the power. And normally when you get that kind of run up publicity-wise to a product, you think, oh God, they're just begging us to forgive them for a dud ahead of time. And quite the opposite. Like, they took all of that insecurity and like just turned it into a great record. But then very quickly, there's just an amazing essay by Adam Phillips, the British psychoanalyst, in the London Review of Books about the phenomenon of resistance, whereby, Freud said that we resist what we most need from the therapist. Like we actively participate in our own misery by resisting the truth of our own unconscious, on and on and on. Like resistance is just key concept. Psychoanalysis, and like Phillips is asking, well, does it even stand up to inspection? Like, what is resisting? Why is it resisting? Who's resisting? And I won't, it's an incredibly long, and Phillips is just an eminence now, and he can write sort of unedited, and I think it's mostly wonderful that he does that. But you sort of follow him on all these like windy paths about sort of, and also resistance is now a word with a revived political valence, of course, because one resists fascism and it harkens back to the resistance, which overwhelmingly we associate with the French resistance under Vichy. But so it's a wonderful, and he quotes this fantastic passage from Derrida that is just terrific. I didn't really realize Derrida had written about it. But here's Derrida, the most beautiful word in the politics and history of this country, this word loaded with all the pathos of my nostalgia. As if at any cost I would like to not have missed blowing up trains, tanks, and headquarters between 1940 and 1945. Why and how did it come to attract like a magnet so many other meanings, virtues, semantic, or disseminal chances, which is just such classic Derrida. But I just want to give you a teeny taste of Phillips right at the end of the piece where he begins. He's not the kind of writer who like comes to this wonderful sort of mystery solving, summation, cathartic summation at all. But he just finally has played with the concept enough to say, so that when we resist, we are also always resisting compliance, refusing to fit in, refusing to play the game, or trying to find out if we can. Our resistance is like a probe to find out what the analyst or the other will make of our resistance, and what this will reveal him to be, authoritarian or kind, say, impatient or flexible. We resist people as a provocation, as a way of getting them to reveal themselves. From a psychoanalytic point of view, resistance is a paradoxical act. Distancing people is a way of finding out if we can get close to them, making them cross to find out how kind or accepting they are. Anyway, there's a lot of that level of insight that's not only a reminder of what a wonderful writer Phillips is, or what an interesting concept resistance is, but of what a sort of sacred and humanistic art psychoanalysis must have been in its heyday. All right, Julia, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you, Isaac.
Hey, always a pleasure, Stephen.
You'll find links to some of the things we talked about on our show page. That's slate.com/culturefest. You can also drop us an email at culturefest@slate.com. Our producer is Benjamin Frisch. Our production assistant is Daniel Hirsch. The composer of our theme music is Nicholas Bertel. The executive producer of Slate Podcasts is Mia Lobel. For Isaac Butler and Julia Turner, I'm Stephen Metcalf. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will talk to you again next week.
This episode is brought to you by Saks Fifth Avenue. Saks Fifth Avenue makes it easy to get creative with your personal style and find the best arrivals for fall. So I went to Saks.com for an accessory that I'm always in the mood to shop for, sunglasses. I love stylish sunglasses, particularly the classic kind of Jackie O-shaped, the big, like slightly oval, dark glasses. And it's a little luxury that, I can afford even when I'm trying not to shop. So I looked at some of the sunglasses on offer at Saks, and they've got all kinds of shapes, not only my favorite Jackie O's, but all kinds of fun cat eye shapes and different designer sunglasses. And just looking at them has been an inspiration for what sunglasses to pair with what outfits. But that's just my experience with Saks.com. There's so much more to explore based on your personal style and what you're looking for. So this fall, whether you're trying out the latest fashion trends or curating a closet that stands the test of time, Saks has you covered. If you want shopping to be fun and easy, then head to Saks Fifth Avenue for inspiring ways to elevate your personal style every day.